The Double Championship may be seeing its final days in New Japan Pro Wrestling, while they also forge ahead with their partnership with AEW, and the Elisa Lam Netflix show raises some controversy. This is the Rantin Review. What's going on, you sexy bitch? Back to the Rantin Review Podcast. I am your host here, formerly Wrestling Rantin, on Valentine's Day. So hopefully you guys are having a good Valentine's Day out there. I did an exclusive little audio Q&A session for my Patreons. Of course, you can go to patreon.com/WrestlingRantin with 3 S's, RASSSLIN, RANTIN, and become a member. I want to give a shout out to new patrons, Charlie Williams Jr. and Jimmy Ramos, for signing up for one of the multiple tiers that are available. Tiers as low as $1 if you just want to help contribute to the podcast and the YouTube channels. We also have a Q&A for a higher tier and the ultimate tier, which is the watch along tier. You can also check that out on the Patreon page as well. This week in wrestling, I have not watched the NXT TakeOver yet, so I will be doing a YouTube review of that as we go ahead, as my computer is just reminding me about that right now. But I did want to talk first off about New Japan Pro Wrestling. So the New Beginning shows, the tour ended this past week with some pretty hard wrestling that was going on. We had several matches that I had some interest in. Master Wato and Ibushi, Bushi from LIJ. Had a very good match. It was a good thing to see Bushi finally getting a win, because usually I'm used to seeing Bushi taking pinfalls, but it's cool that he got that. And over to young guy Master Wato, I'm sure in about a year or two the decision will be reversed, because poor Bushi's always beat up on, but it was good to see him get a win. Of course, we've come out of all of this with Tenzan no longer having a Mongolian chop. But this section of the New Beginning tour was not focused on that. It was more focused on Bullet Club, Kota Ibushi, LIJ, and stuff like that. Suzuki-gun, or what remains of Suzuki-gun. We have the Dangerous Tekkers challenging the Gorillas of Destiny in a rematch from Wrestle Kingdom for the IWGP Tag Team titles, which was an interesting match. The back and forth between two heel factions works very well with these two factions, because they're similar and different in many different ways. Bullet Club is a little bit cooler, kind of hip heels, whereas Suzuki-gun are more your kind of rough and tumble, kind of thuggish kind of heels, even though Bullet Club is kind of thuggish in itself, especially when you're talking about the Gorillas of Destiny, who kind of thrive on that kind of persona. But ultimately, it wound up with the Gorillas of Destiny retaining the Tag Team Championships, but Taichi, freaking Birdface, did get back the Bird Claw. Iska's old claw, the metal, iron fingers, or whatever the hell they call it, is back in the possession of Taichi, and he did get possessed during the match. Now, I don't know how I feel about that. Supernatural stuff in New Japan, it's not really what you watch New Japan for. That's more of a WWE kind of thing. It actually kind of reminded me of a Lucha Underground kind of a storyline. So, not a big fan of it, but it served its purpose. I don't know if they're going to continue this. It depends on whether or not the fans are into it or not. It could become like a funny gimmick, but it's nothing to really take seriously. But GOD retains the titles, and then on the next night in Hiroshima, they were teaming with Jay White to challenge for the never-open 6-man tag team championships in this very heated feud that they have with Chaos. Chaos finally feeling like a faction for the first time in about 2 years. They've been united together. Yoshihashi, Toru Yano, Kazuchika Okada, Hiroki Goto, and Tomohiro Ishii all mobilized as an actual Chaos force against Bullet Club, and in particular Jay White, as they just love to beat the living crap out of Jay White, who's complained about it. He's made fun of Ishii because of the pin and at the New Year Dash, and he's running from Ishii but challenging Ishii and all this other stuff. Evil's running away from Okada, doesn't want to do a match with him. So we've got a full-on, very well done, I would say, rivalry renewed between the two factions, Bullet Club and Chaos. Bullet Club is kind of like now the de facto heel faction in New Japan, and all the other factions in one way or another seem to be feuding with them. So there's that established on the card. I did think that the Gorillas and Jay White were going to win the Never Openweight Tag Team Championships, the 6-man titles. They did not. Of all people, Yoshihashi coming through. They did a good job. Yoshihashi, Ishii, and Goto. I really like this trio. This is one of the first Never Openweight 6-man tag team matches that I've actually had any real interest in quite some time. The guys did a great job in that match overall. We also had of course, the big one, the IWGP Double Championship, which is what we're going to get into a little bit more here. Kota Ibushi defending the title against SANADA. Now, this was a better match than their G1 match, which I have roundly been critical of since it happened back in October. I didn't think that match was very good at all. This match wasn't anything spectacular for me, but it definitely was far better than the one that I saw before. Again, SANADA's whatever funk he was in last year, he seems to have gotten out of it. And Kota Ibushi's just amazing because, it's Kota Ibushi. He's Kota Ibushi. He's going to be amazing. Pull off some really good stuff there. We got an impromptu match before we get to the conclusion. I'm going to go back a little bit. Okada was teaming up with Yano against Dick Togo and Evil on the last night of the tour. And, the whole running thing has been that Evil doesn't want to have the match with Okada, but they got into this. It was a count out because Evil kind of kept Okada out the ring. It was a double count out. The crowd was not happy with it. Okada was pissed off, hit Evil in the back with the chair. So Evil's like, all right, you want to fight me? And Okada's like, come on, let's do it now. So we got an impromptu additional match on this card, Okada versus Evil. It didn't go very long before, once again, there was some chicanery and disqualifications and everything else. So that feud is still going on. This is a different way in which they're doing the typical feud in New Japan Pro Wrestling, which usually doesn't have this kind of stuff in it. So they're putting a new spin on it. It's not just, okay, we're going to have the match of Evil and Okada. Okada's going to win, and then where are they going to move on to? They're drawing this out a little bit, which I think is good, because I still don't think anybody's really ready for Okada to get back in the world title picture. And I think Evil is going to have to do something else besides what he did in 2020 to draw interest to him, because I ultimately, that title run that he had, not very impressive. A lot of people complained about it. A lot of people still complaining about it. So Evil's kind of got to find his way as his heel character and where his place. I still don't feel like he's got a real place in Bullet Club. He seems kind of out of sorts in it, that he doesn't really belong there. But, it is what it is. And they did a good job with getting some heat on that feud. I am now actually interested in seeing what the ultimate conclusion is going to be between Evil and Kazuchika Okada in this rivalry that they have going on. So back to the main event of the whole tour. Ibushi gets the big win, hits about 35,000 Komagoe knees on poor SANADA, who actually kicked out of two of them, which was phenomenal. And after the match, immediately comes out Naito. Naito's done playing around with Homa. He's done playing around with, the mid-card and the undercard guys. He's now throwing his hat back in the ring. But a little twist on this. Of all things, he's not challenging Kota Ibushi for the Double Championships. He's not even challenging Kota Ibushi for the IWGP Heavyweight title. And I guess this is a way for them to try to split up the titles, this Double Championship. Naito actually wanted to go after the IC title. Ibushi agreed with it, so they're going to meet, I believe, pretty soon. I don't know if it's Castle Attack. I think it probably will be Castle Attack, or sometime. I think it is Castle Attack. They're going to meet for the Intercontinental Championship, which, again, on the surface, it's like, even Zack Sabre Jr., who did commentary. By the way, I expected Zack Sabre Jr. to be good on commentary, on color commentary. He was. First of all, you barely could hear what anything he was saying. It sounded like he was just not into it. Like Kevin Kelly coerced him to do it. He's like, fine, Kevin, I'll do it, you bloody wanker. And then he showed up there and Kevin Kelly's spending the entire match with Ibushi and SANADA trying to get Zack Sabre Jr. to say anything entertaining at all. And Zack's just not having it. El Phantasmo, far better on commentary on color commentary than Zack Sabre Jr. Or, maybe Zack was just having an off night. He did, it was a long tour. It's at the end of the tour. I think he just wanted to go home at that point. But even Zack Sabre Jr. said, Naito's an idiot for going after the IC title instead. Okay, so if you go for the IC title and you beat Ibushi, you could have been the world champion and not the IC champion. So why are you only, it's the never-ending story of Tetsuya Naito and the Intercontinental Championship. And now adds a wrinkle to this match, though, because I think if it wasn't for that, if Naito was challenging for the Double Championships, I would probably automatically assume that Ibushi would retain the title against Naito, because I wouldn't see them taking a belt off of Ibushi this early to Naito. But with Naito challenging only for the IC title, now it's kind of a 50-50 thing. I could see on one hand Ibushi retaining, but I could also see Naito winning the IC title. Again, the title that has been synonymous with his career in New Japan for the past 8 years. I could see him winning that back, and he could be somebody to elevate that championship while you let Ibushi have a title run and then maybe come back to it at another point in time in the future. Again, the craziness that ensues with these two guys, even though the Wrestle Kingdom match wasn't anywhere near as dangerous as matches we've seen from them in the past, this is not going to be at Wrestle Kingdom. So I think we may, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, be getting back to a crazy Ibushi Tetsuya Naito match at Castle Attack, I assume, for the Intercontinental Championship. So a new wrinkle in there. I'm going to put my money slightly more on Naito right now to win the IC title, for them to split those belts up again. They kind of need it. Some people have been asking, like, what are you going to do with this guy, like Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay? I mean, there's nothing for them to there's no titles for them to go after, given that the IC titles merged with the world title. The Never Openweight Championship is a strong style title held by Tanahashi right now, and the U.S. Championship is being dealt with over here in the United States. So it leaves a hole for the upper mid-card guys. There's nothing really for them to shoot at. So Naito having the IC title, I think, might be a good idea. Of course, we will see what happens with that as we head towards Castle Attack and then later on into the New Japan Cup. Speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling, of course, the ongoing partnership, more information has been coming out about the Forbidden Door that has been famously open now between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Rocky Romero was on some podcast this week. He did give us some behind-the-scenes stuff about that what's going on. It's been in the works. But there were some silly things that got in the way. There's some things that could have gotten away if the Kenta surprise had gotten out, and that could have hurt the relationship too. But I think it seems like so far so good that the two companies are working out well with this Jon Moxley Kenta thing, the Bullet Club USA, Bullet Club Japan thing, and it seems like, given the social media rhetoric of Jay White and Tama Tonga, along with some stuff that Don Callis and Kenny Omega have been saying, we may be heading towards a Bullet Club Japan versus Bullet Club USA event. And now the question with that is, and I think that's not going to happen until after the Moxley Kenta match airs, but after that, it's going to be, I don't know what's going to quite happen there. Are we going to see Bullet Club Japan show up at an AEW Dynamite? Or, which would just blow the roof off of everything, the probably more exciting way to do it might be for the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega to show up at a New Japan show. Whether or not it's New Japan Strong or they actually get to fly. I mean, I don't see them flying over to Japan anytime soon, but that would be tremendously huge, especially in Japan, because, the Japanese wrestling fans have a long memory. They remember Kenny Omega. They remember the Good Brothers, and it's so rare for guys who leave New Japan, unfortunately, to come back. I mean, we're still, AJ ain't coming back. Finn Balor's not coming back. Shinsuke don't look like he's coming back. You got Kushida. Who knows if Kushida is coming back? There's a lot of guys that once they head up to the E, they're not coming back. And the same thing now kind of AEW, the Bucks and Cody and Kenny and Hangman Page and Trent and all of those guys that left in mass exodus over 2 years ago. I'm sure a lot of Japanese fans have kind of written them off. And I think it'd be a great thing for New Japan for finally some of these people that have left kind of, some of us can kind of say they kind of use the company to bump up their profile so they could go back to the States and get bigger money and work for the quote unquote bigger companies. But New Japan is still the money-wise the second biggest wrestling company in the world, I think. AEW may have surpassed that by now, but they are still number 2 or number 3 in the world. And for them to finally get back some of these stars that have left the company and gone on to over to the States and done other stuff over here in WWE, NXT, AEW, I think that would be a good shot for New Japan. Although New Japan, on the flip side, they're not really hurting for getting in big name stars. Of course, Jericho, Jon Moxley, so on and so forth. They do get Kenta when he came over because, people I think thought he was going back to Noah, and he didn't. He went to New Japan. So, there's a lot that can be done here. A lot of people have some questions about where this is going to go. Again, according to Rocky Romero and some reports from Tony Khan, and all the indicators are that this is going to be an ongoing thing. And we are finally starting to see this coalition that people like myself and a lot of other people have said these companies need to get together, because if they can get together, they can then they can rival WWE eventually over the next couple of years as being as big, because the fan base, this kind of goes to something that people, kind of knock AEW for, like, well, they don't have as big an audience as TNA, or they only have as big an audience as TNA ever had, which I think the biggest audience viewership TNA ever had was like 1.45 million. Let me check that out right now. Largest audience for TNA Impact Wrestling, the largest audience the largest attendance they ever had was 7,000 people. So AEW is well past that one. So let's see. Oh, it's a 1.35 actually. So TNA's highest rating in the history of the Thursday night show was a 1.35 rating. It may have been different for that Monday night rating, but I think we'll go with that one for now, unless somebody else knows differently. The show drew on an average 2.0 million viewers. So AEW is about at their highest so far, has been about at the same place where TNA was at its highest. Now, some people will say, well, that's obvious that, AEW is just another TNA. Not so fast, my friends. You have to account. You always do a multivariate analysis of statistics. That's why when you see people on social media quoting out these factoids, they're always getting this crap wrong, because they're only reading one piece of data and not taking in all the other pieces of data to make an assessment. When TNA did this 1.35, that was at a time when the wrestling audience in general in the United States was about 6 to 7 million people in total. So they got about 1/6 of the wrestling audience. AEW today doing similar numbers. Well, AEW, the wrestling audience is only about 3 million people in the States now. And yes, that is a significant drop in the last 10 years. We can talk about that at another time, why that is. But the proportion of the wrestling audience that AEW has is a lot larger than the portion of the audience that TNA had at its height. And right now, AEW seems to be getting about 1/3 of the wrestling audience in the United States and in North America watching the show. So, there are differences there that you have to take into account for. But I think if Impact, New Japan, AEW teaming up together along with CMLL and AAA, that's one thing I want to look into that's going to be interesting, because AEW is associated with AAA and New Japan is associated with CMLL. And for those of you who know about Lucha Libre, those two companies are the biggest ones in Mexico. And it's almost like a WCW, WWE thing with them down there. There's not, if you're working with one, you can't work with the other kind of thing if you're a foreign company. So I'm going to be curious to see, because there's going to be a lot of cross-pollinating of stars. They're going to have to be very careful with that. The only thing that seems to be missing right now is Europe. I don't know what's going on in the UK, and not a lot of news coming out in the past since COVID started about the UK wrestling scene, which seems to have almost dried up, unfortunately, even though like 4 years ago they were experiencing a renaissance. And I think that's the last bit for this partnership, to find a company. I'm assuming Rev Pro would be the obvious choice, but finding one of those UK companies and cross-pollinating with them and helping that company grow, because all of these companies should rise in their numbers if this partnership is done correctly. So it's definitely a thing to keep an eye on. The last bit of news and stuff I'm going to talk about today in the wrestling world is it's outside the wrestling world. It's in the entertainment world. I will be doing a review of WandaVision episode 6, as I just watched that yesterday, and oh my god, I definitely, that's going to be on YouTube. I might have the premiere for it here on my Patreon page, but something else popped up on streaming services today, and I did not know about this. And again, for those of you who are just interested in wrestling, this is not about wrestling, but the Netflix show, they have this, I think, what is this thing called? There's this old story about Elisa Lam, from, I think, 2013 it was. And some of you may know this story, some of you might not know this story. But Elisa Lam was this 21-year-old young lady, a Chinese from a first-generation Chinese immigrant in Canada, who decided in 2013 she was going to do some traveling, and this video surfaced. And I remember seeing this video years ago and being like, man, it was creepy. A video surfaced because the girl disappeared, and the only the last video footage of her is just really strange, and you can go look it up online. It's still, even though I know what happened to her now, it was very creepy at the time, because it's video footage of her getting into an elevator, and then she presses all the buttons, but the elevator door doesn't ever close. Then she's like stepping in and stepping out of it and looking around and walking weird and acting weird and taking weird steps, and it seems like she's looking for somebody or that she's hiding from somebody. And then she stands outside of it and her hands move in weird ways, and then the elevator just stays open, and then all of a sudden it starts closing. The time code on the video was all screwed up. Some things didn't seem right. And all of this controversy surfaced about this video. And again, if you go and look the video up online, the original video of her in the elevator, it is weird. It is creepy. And you kind of thought that something was off with this girl. Maybe there was a ghost or some possession. It was really, really strange. And then it came out that they found her body in the water towers of this hotel. It's called the Cecil Hotel in LA on Skid Row, which there's a whole other section about that. But they found her body in the water tower. The people who were in the hotel have been drinking, bathing, cooking in this water, for 18 days as her body decomposed in the water tanks to the hotel. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, this is a really, really sad, weird, strange story, and there's so many rumors that popped up. And now there's a documentary they have that I think is number one right now on Netflix about this story. I think it's a four-part documentary series they have on there where they go and explain a lot of this stuff and the mystery. And I hadn't followed up on this thing since I saw the video of her in the elevator like 5 years ago, whatever it was. And I was flipping around on Netflix tonight. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. Yes, that's that story about that girl in that elevator in that weird video, and it looked like she was possessed or something, or something creepy was going on, right? So they cover all angles. I gotta say, this is a far better documentary than that crappy propaganda social dilemma documentary they made. This one is actually an honest documentary where they cover all sides and actually do it correctly, and it's not a propaganda piece. So well done, well edited, a little bit too overdramatic in some places, but they cover all the bases. And long story short, it turns out that, as I think we all probably could have figured out using our brains, that the young lady, she unfortunately had bipolar disorder. She wasn't taking her medication. Her sister reported that she, would get a little erratic at times. And she was out here traveling alone, meeting a bunch of random strange people, going out, in all kinds of bad situations. But at the end of the day, what it seems like is that she was having an episode and wound up on the roof. And I guess she decided to hide in the water tank and then got stuck in there and wound up drowning. And that's what the most probable, likely stuff that the evidence shows. But the part that really interests me and kind of really pissed me off was, wait for it, how social media got involved. So over the last 7 years this case has been around, there's all these internet sleuths that were, investigating the story, and these weird, screwed up people go into the hotel. Now, they're in, and a lot of these people are in the videos. They're YouTubers and bloggers and Redditors or whatever. They're in the video, and you're seeing their videos, and you're seeing them talk and everything else, and just this weird, like, obsession that they all had with it, and coming up with all these conspiracy theories and all this nonsense and jumping to conclusions and everything else, which happens a lot from time to time with things like this. But they started affecting the investigation. They started hurting the investigation. And the biggest thing that came away is that some point along the line, and I never knew about any of this, there's this death metal guy who apparently had stayed at the hotel, but he had stayed there like an entire year before the girl was even there. But because he made some videos and people were drawing conclusions that they wanted to see about what was going on with her. And they drew conclusions because this guy said certain things in his songs and made a video, and he was at the hotel and he said something about China and he said something about drowning. He's a death metal artist, for God's sakes. Everybody said that he did it. He must have done it. And people were sending him death threats. Thousands of people were harassing this guy. He got lost all his social media accounts and everything else. They interviewed the guy on this documentary, and it just made me so mad. The poor guy, of course, didn't do it. He was on tour, and, obviously, he was doing something for his music or something like that. Had all the receipts, had videos of him when he was not even in the country, when this poor young lady apparently had an accidental drowning. But he talked about how, like, it had ruined his life. He had tried to commit suicide at one point, and I was so ticked off. And then they have these idiots. We've been watching through the whole documentary and seeing them accusing this guy. And then they go, well, sometimes you get wrapped up in a story. I'm like, kiss my ass. You guys, you assholes ruined this dude's life. He almost killed himself because you morons are sitting there on your little laptop and thinking everything's like some movie. They even drew comparisons to Dark Water, the Japanese movie that was remade, about, then the little girl goes up and she drowns in the water. It's so eerie. Maybe this guy reenacted it with Elisa, and it's like, no, there's too many coincidences. It's got to be something. I was like, no, coincidences happen all the time. I mean, if you watch a documentary, they stretch a lot of stuff, and there is some stuff that's like strangely coincidental, but again, it's coincidence. But they ruined this dude's life, and then he's later on in the documentary saying how, and when it came out what really happened to her, nobody apologized to the guy. Not a single person of all of these people who sent him death threats and accused him and basically committed libel and slander and ruined this guy's life and almost had him kill himself. Nobody ever apologized to him. And which is the least they should do. They should be paying for this guy's mental, psychological being, because he's screwed. The dude is screwed up. I mean, he was a little off anyway. I mean, you got to be a death metal artist as he is. You got to be a little bit kind of off a little bit. But I think they pushed him over the edge. And I think he even said, though, that, he's kind of a victim of this hotel, the Cecil Hotel, that's got this really long history to it of a lot of really, really depressing, sad stuff. And somehow, in a weird way, he's a victim of it too. Sadly enough, at the end, you find out that somebody's bought the hotel and they're going to, and this is bad taste and bad taste. They're going to turn the rooftop into a bar with a wading pool. I don't care who you are. If you go to this hotel now and they put a wading pool on that roof and you step in that wading pool, you're playing Russian roulette. I'm not tempting fate like that. I don't know. That place is, I don't know. There's psychological reasons for it. The place is, the area's got a lot of, it's not a good area, and the type of hotel it is, it draws in certain kinds of people, and in that environment, this is the kind of stuff that happens. And there are a lot of other tragedies that happen outside of the Elisa Lam story. But man, it's that is bad taste to put a wading pool on the top of the roof where this girl drowned to death in the water tank. But I definitely recommend it. It's definitely a captivating story. It is Elisa Lam. You'll see it on Netflix. It's the investigation documentary on Netflix about this internet mystery that's been around for many, many years. And the conclusion is, the conclusion's sad. There's no ghost, there's no witchcraft, there's no other person, there's no conspiracy by the police or the hotel managers and all this other stuff. The whole thing is just an unfortunate, sad story about mental health issues, and that's the biggest thing to take away from it is that, one of two big things is that mental health issues are no joke, man. And if you do, if anybody listening to this has mental health issues, definitely go seek some help because it's no joke, man. You can't play around with that stuff. And the second thing is stop playing. People need to stop acting like they know stuff on doing these internet detective sleuths on the internet. It's one thing to do speculation about stuff. It's another thing when you become so convinced of your own brilliance by doing no research, no investigation, no nothing whatsoever, going around stalking the hotel and going to the girl's grave and stuff. It's really sick, kind of creepy crap these people were doing. Stop doing that. Just stop. Leave and stop screwing up. The professionals, people have trained to know how to do this stuff. You are not trained. Just stop. And when it gets to the point of hurting, this guy and the parents, you're stifling the investigation for the parents, and you're hurting this dude who almost killed himself because you all jumped on and accused him and got his all on social media. And the guy said today he's not even doing music anymore. Like he's struggling to find purpose in his life again. It's really sad, man. But anyway, just check that out. I think that's a good documentary if you guys want something other than wrestling to watch, or Marvel TV shows. It's a well done one. I definitely recommend it. But that's it today for the Rantin Review. Again, I hope you guys are having a great Valentine's Day. And if you're not having a great Valentine's Day because you're single or the person you wanted didn't respond the way you wanted to, or whatever the case may be, pick your head up, man. Don't get depressed about it. It's a holiday that's invented it's basically invented so people can sell stuff to guilt you into buying things for your partner. That's really that's really the purpose of it. So don't feel so bad. But you can look at it an optimistic way. It's a special day that you can show an extra special. It's a reason to show extra special love to your partner or whatever. But if you're not in that league, don't get depressed about Valentine's Day. It's nothing. It's nothing to get depressed about. But thank you guys for checking us out. I will see you guys in the future for more editions of the Rantin Review Podcast. Hope you enjoy this, and I will see you on YouTube. I guess, again, follow me there at the Rantin Review. You can just search on YouTube for the Rantin Review. And, of course, my financial channel, Wrestling with Finance, which those videos have been moved over there. Got a couple of new ones up this weekend as well. And until then, I'll see you guys soon. Stay safe and behave yourself, but not too much.